For reaction to this, I want to bring in retired IDF Colonel Miri Eisin. She has a background in military intelligence and heads up the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism at Israel's Reichman University. Miri, thank you so much for joining us. So in response to those comments from the president to 60 Minutes, the Israeli ambassador to the UN said that Israel has no plans of occupying Gaza. So if that's the case, once Israel does deem its mission to uproot Hamas successful, what follows? If it's not Israel that controls and governs Gaza, then what is a palatable alternative? Because the Palestinian Authority, as we know, is corrupt, it's old, it's feckless. It's hard enough for them to even maintain control over the West Bank right now.
The framing that you're talking about right now means that you're asking me about something which is a bit too far in the future. I greatly appreciate the question itself, but right now we're in a war that is unprecedented. It's not like any other. So I find it really hard right now as an academic, as a colonel, to try to say what's the day after. I can say what we can't have. We cannot have a terror horrific organization like Hamas that is both controlling the Gaza Strip and that enormous amassment of weaponry, of capabilities, of cruelty that we saw over the last 10 days. So that I don't know what's instead. I do know what we can't have there. That doesn't make it any easier, but that's our challenge.
Miri Eisin here. It's always been part of Israel's folklore, Israel's collective consciousness, this idea of beating the odds, this idea of, being surrounded by enemies, overcoming them, and being able to live to see another day. We saw that in the Arab-Israeli War in 1948. We saw it during the Six-Day War in '67. This idea of beating the odds is a big part of Israel's identity. This time feels different, though. I mean, this idea of being able to go in there, free 199 hostages and defeat Hamas and have minimal losses on the IDF side is just sort of unrealistic. Just talk us through what awaits the IDF when they get to the other side of that border. Just walk us through what they're up against here.
So Zain, I have an enormous respect and understanding of Israeli resilience, but let's talk about what Hamas are preparing. And when I say Hamas, as you said before, this isn't all the Palestinians, and half the population there is under the age of 18, but I'm talking about what Hamas prepares. Hamas has built over the last 15 years, they violently took over the Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority in 2007. They've built a subterranean arena. Think of it as the subway system under New York City, as the subway system under DC, only this doesn't have trains. This is for cache of weapons. What type of weapons? We're talking about the enormous amount of weapons that Israel has shown that they brought into Israel on Saturday to continue to use to butcher and to kill. And they have an enormous amount still inside the Gaza Strip. We're talking about command and control. But when we go in as a ground operation, what they will try to do is to drag us on their terms. They are going to booby trap the tunnels. They are going to put in IEDs, different explosives. I foresee, and it's horrific to think of, that they are going to, it's called, oh my God, I can't even say it on TV, but what they would have no qualms about doing with the Israeli hostages, with a 9-month baby or with an 85-year-old Holocaust survivor, using them as part of their terror element to stop us from going in to try to get to their cache of weapons, and that's where they're going to be holding the hostages. So it's going in, and you can expect anti-tank weapons, suicide drones, explosives, IEDs. And you said before, Zain, that we're past the stage of a war where there are no casualties. Of course there will be casualties. That's why this is so hard. It's hard for all sides. But what else can we do? We've all seen what they pre-planned and executed over this Saturday. And this is something that they planned and trained for, including horrific descriptions of how they want to torture and mutilate, how they did. They booby-trapped bodies. And that they did on Saturday, so that we need to get in there, and it will be harsh, but it will be done.
It is absolutely heinous, you're right, that we should note the terror inflicted upon innocent Israelis last week. Miri, just in terms of preparation and training, the last time that the IDF went into Gaza, as we noted, was in 2014. I'm just curious whether in your expertise or from what you know still covering this arena, Is the IDF prepared, or is there training for a scenario of this scale in terms of not only following and protecting a country after such a mass scale attack, but also knowing that you have nearly 200 hostages whose whereabouts are unknown at this point?
So as you've just said, in that sense, we are in an unprecedented war. We have to stop comparing this. We're in an unprecedented, it's not a terror attack. This was something so big, so strong, we're at a loss of words. We're going to have to invent the words, both in the media, both for all of us to understand it. I absolutely think that the IDF has the capacity. I do not think that there is any military in the world that has ever had to train for this kind of event, both in the defense of what they did, coming in that butchering manner, and are going to the offensive, both to try to reach the hostages and to try to destroy this Hamas infrastructure. You train, you do ideas, you try to be innovative. This is the way that you go about it, but I'm going to be clear. There are going to be casualties, certainly because Hamas used their own people as human shields, as they have done not only over the last 10 days, but for years, but also the casualties on the Israeli side. And that still means that you go in, you build your strength to do so.
All right, Miri, thank you so much. Retired IDF Colonel Miri Eisin, thank you so much. You bring up such an important point in one of your answers, this idea that given how diligently Hamas planned these attacks inside southern Israel, you have to know that they are obviously planning Israel's response as well, and they are certainly ready for IDF forces. Miri, thank you so much for being with us. You are watching CNN. Our